Welcome, friends and members. We are so glad that you are here, and it is an honor to be here with Congressman Brian J. Mast, and we thank him for being with us. Um, I am Shirlene C. Olson, the chair of the Armed Services Committee. And what I would like to do is first, I'd like to thank our president, Julie Harris, for allowing our committee to have an opportunity to launch our first project for this year. The armed services, our goal is to encourage Republican women to take pride in supporting the United States of America, military, active duty, National Guard, reserve, veterans, and their families. The military are critical elements in providing and maintaining our democracy and our form of government. They are a diffuse constituency. They are out there, but often not in large numbers, and are often in locations that could make a difference to our political endeavors. And they do so much for us, but often overlooked as needing assistance or just a simple thank you. I am a disabled veteran myself, served 23 years in the Army, and it's close and dear to my heart that we recognize veterans that have served. But there are those that also, I feel, even though I'm a member of the armed forces and retired, I feel that there are those that have given the ultimate sacrifice. Congressman J. Mast, as I studied him, when I first initially met him, he doesn't know it, but I seen him at the RNC. And I tried to catch up with him, but I'll tell you, he outwalked me by far. Congressman Brian Mast is in his fourth term representing the 21st Congressional District of Florida. Prior to his election to Congress, Brian followed in his father's footsteps by serving in the U.S. Army for more than 12 years, earning medals including the Bronze Star Medal, the Army Commendation Medal of Valor, the Purple Heart Medal, and the Defense Meritorious Service Medal. While deployed in Afghanistan, he worked as a bomb disposal expert under the Elite Joint Special Operations Command. The last improvised explosive device that he found resulted in a catastrophic injuries, which included the loss of both of his legs and a finger. While lying in bed recovering at Walter Reed Medical Center, Brian's father gave him advice that has stuck with him to this day. To ensure the greatest service he gave to our country and the best example he set for his children was still ahead of him. Brian took this advice to heart and dedicated himself to finding new ways to serve our country and his community. Brian remained on active duty following the injuries and provided expertise to the National Nuclear Security Administration and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms during his recovery process. After his retirement from the Army, he continued working in counterterrorism and national defense as an explosive specialist with the Department of Homeland Security. Brian subsequently received a degree from Harvard University and volunteered to serve alongside the Israel Defense Forces to show support for the freedom Israel represents throughout the Middle East and the world. In Congress, Brian strives to serve as he did on the battlefield, without regard for personal gain or personal sacrifice. He is a member of two committees, the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, where his priorities include fixing pressure water quality issues stemming from Lake Okeechobee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, where he uses his military expertise to help strengthen the safety and security of the United States. Brian lives in Fort Pierce, Florida, with his lovely wife, Brianna, and 4 children, Magnum, Maverick, Madeline, and Major. And as we bring in our honorable guest, Purple Heart recipient, Brian J. Mast. I do want to know the story behind him naming all of his children starting with the letter M.
Thank you for that great introduction. Can I start with a thank you before that?
Well, thank you.
Okay, I'm going
Yes.
to start with a thank you and an apology. Just number one, I apologize for my tardiness. I was on a flight to Detroit, Michigan. I'm in an airport right now, so I apologize also if you have to hear any noise in the background. It's not how we intended this, but I'm on the road for the presidential campaign right now in Michigan, and we'll have a number of stops here and other places in the next couple days. So my apologies for that. How did we get to all of the M names? So I'm a child of the 80s. You can guess where Magnum came from. You might think the gambler, you might think the firearm. It actually came from the private investigator who was working in Hawaii with his friends with helicopters and Ferraris, Magnum PI. That's where my oldest son came from. He's now 14. Maverick, of course, Top Gun, prior to the movie being named Maverick. He's 12 years old. And my daughter, Madeline, that's just a name my wife and I liked for a little girl. And then we didn't have a third boy's name picked out when we ended up deciding to have another child. And she let me pick, and I just decided on Major Mast, no middle name. Grandpa doesn't have a middle name, so it's just Major Mast.
Okay. That's awesome.
That's how we got
So,
there.
so can you give us a few remarks of where you are at? I don't know if you got a chance. We did send ahead. I know you're traveling. We did send ahead of time our itinerary, some of our focus topic points. Can you lead into tell us? And one of the things I'd like you to lead into is the resolution supporting Purple Heart Day. Why is that so important to you?
I'm a Purple Heart recipient veteran. I lost my legs in Afghanistan 2010, injured like many of our brothers and sisters in arms. And let me say that as well. All of you that served, I could not be more proud than to have you as my brothers and sisters. That just, I love you guys. Uh, I know what you did in training. I know what you did in service. I know what you did in combat. I know what you did being away from your families. I know the things that you missed, and I know the friends that you lost. And I absolutely love you guys. And we have a candidate for president who loves you all as well, respects your service, respects what it is that you leave to go and defend this place. And so when I think about those that made me want to serve, it's all the people that came before me made me say, that's all I ever want to do. And no offense to anybody in the Navy or the Air Force or the Coast Guard or the Marines. My father was in the Army, and just I only ever wanted to be in the Army. It was my path forward. But when I think a little bit about that time in combat and that specific night, it was September 19th, 2010, that I was injured. Just as a bomb technician, EOD with JSOC, it was always under the cover of darkness, and it was always looking for a high value target that had popped up on the radar. And we got down to a riverbank that night where I knew there had to be some bombs buried. I didn't find or see them until ultimately I found one that detonated underneath my feet, and that resulted in the injury of losing both my legs and losing my left index finger. But luckily, nobody else was injured. Nobody else was killed. But that's a really obvious example of what injury looks like. And people can look at me and they can see service. And so it is important to me to recognize my brothers and sisters that have Purple Hearts and have a day dedicated to them. But more broadly than that, service definitely took something from all of us. I would never pretend that it didn't give me far more than it ever took from me. It absolutely did. But it took something from us, and it left something on us. And hopefully it ends up leaving us stronger. But any way that we can find to make people connect to our service, recognize that, like anything that you is worth your time and your purpose and your effort and your desire, it causes work. It takes blisters. It causes you to have to go out there and have strife and work through things. And combat and service is no different. So it was important to recognize Purple Heart, or establish a Purple Heart Day. And in that vein, just another way to go out there and recognize our service members. But I will take that as an opportunity to say something very political, but very personal and very important. And that's simply to say this: America has to be worth the service. it the things that we do are always dangerous, and they always have the potential to be deadly. You can't do that for something that's not worth your blood, worth your bones, worth your service, and potentially worth your life. And that means you have to have somebody that recognizes the risk, wants the risk of you being in Arlington National Cemetery to be the last possible choice. As much as we love to do our jobs, that needs to be the last possible choice, is that we and our friends end up in that place. And that what our nation stands for, the opportunity that we present every day, the way that we conduct ourselves, is worthy of the sacrifice of our Gold Star families, of their service members that they lost, of the individuals who received Purple Hearts because of the injuries that they sustained in combat, of the people that served even in peacetime, but were part of the deterrent force and preventing war from coming to our shores. But they still had to spend time away from their families, birthdays, bath times, anniversaries. Our nation has to be worth it. And that means we have to have somebody that's fighting to make it worth it every single day.
I'd like to thank you for that. I'd like to share a comment that you made. You said in March 2, 2016, in an article by Renee Gantz, and I'm going to ask you to forgive me for mispronouncing her name. You said, "What's in me didn't end when I took off my uniform. Even when I woke up at Walter Reed and was lying there in the hospital bed, I knew that I didn't want to go through life thinking that the best thing I'd done was in my past," said Mast. I thought that was phenomenal for you to have said that. And I think every veteran can relate to that. And that leads me into, why is it so essential to have President Donald J. Trump as our commander in chief back in office?
You know, I spoke a little bit about that just now, and just saying we need to have somebody that wants to make sure that the potential for the most catastrophic things that could happen in our service is the last possible choice, but that we have somebody that's working to make sure we have a country that is worth our sacrifice and worth what we fight for. And you have two flags behind you, one just displaying the stars, that folded flag, and one displaying the 50 stars and the 13 red and white stripes. Actually, you have I see several more now in the photos and other places, so you have more than that, but two physical ones. And I just encourage every veteran, think about what this country means to you. You know, we all have reasons that we went out there and we served. And we know that what we did in combat, we did absolutely for our country, but even more so for our brothers and sisters to our left and right in combat, for whom we would do anything for, and they would have done the same for us. But we have to think, what does that place mean to us? What is this place? It's not just dirt. It's not just sand. It's the place that we call home. But for me, it means that every day that I wake up, I get to decide if today is better than yesterday, or I don't. But I get to make that decision for myself. Nobody can make that decision for me. And that's the opportunity that I believe America presents every day. It doesn't matter if yesterday I lost 2 legs and a finger. I get to wake up under 50 stars and 13 red and white stripes and decide that it is a better day than yesterday, and that I can still go out there and do anything that I want, and decide that it's still going to be the most fruitful life going forward every single day. The best things that I do are in front of me every single day. The best example that I set for my kids is in front of me every single day. We get to make sure that that's the opportunity that every single person has, and we get to defend that. And I want to make sure that we have a president in place that fights to make sure that every American has the opportunity, because he's fighting for Americans without being ashamed, number one. Not saying that the idea of putting America first or Americans first is hateful. It's moronic to think that we shouldn't be fighting to put America or Americans first when we are Americans. And you have to be able to believe that if you're going to fight and make this place worth our sacrifice, to make sure that we are a nation that's secure. We know that tragedy can befall any of us, but it doesn't mean that we invite the tragedy into our lives, into our communities, into our homes by leaving our nation unsecure and purposefully leaving it unsecure. It's moronic. It's the conversation of what is common sense versus what is crazy. And we have a President Trump that's fighting for common sense, and another side that's just trying to establish crazy on every front. We know as members of the military and people that have been a part of military families that we need to have a supply chain in order to be successful. And that supply chain has to include energy. And that has to mean that we take care of our energy between the Atlantic and the Pacific so that we use our comparative advantages. That's the idea of common sense versus crazy. We have to be a nation that recognizes if we put our armed service members, our members of the military, and our veterans, anybody that served in uniform in harm's way, that we take care of them. And whether somebody's out of uniform or in uniform, and this is what President Trump has specifically said to me, we have to make sure that our service members and our veterans know that the humans are more important than the hardware. The humans are that drive the tanks are more important than the tanks. The humans that sit in the cockpit of a jet are more important than the jets. The humans that carry a rifle are more important than the rifles. And the same for those that retired. He wants to make sure that this place recognizes the value of the most powerful weapon that this nation has, and that being the individual that put on that uniform. You are the most powerful weapon. And I want to, if you don't mind, I'll just say one other thing on this front, kind of going back to the beginning part that you said, a little bit about recovery and making sure that we as veterans move forward every single day, no matter what it is that we still think about from the past. And I think about many things. I weep on Memorial Day. I can't help it. It just happens when I hear taps playing in the background. You know, sometimes I can't even say the word taps because I've seen too many flag draped coffins, flag draped caskets, and that's what it is. But I would encourage all of you, if you've never done it, there's a study that followed the POWs from the Hanoi Hilton. And it's a set of people that's really less than about 500 people that were there. But these men from the Vietnam War that were in the Hanoi Hilton, they were, daily recipients of torture. They were in these places for years, sleeping on bare concrete floors with rats and roaches, and probably no bigger than the space of a small bathroom. They were kept in a constant state of starvation, basically fed water and dirt for years, which kept them in that state of starvation. And when they came home, those that were studying them, following them, thought they were not going to be of any use to society moving forward. They were going to be, just on drugs, just not interested in participating, not having value. Their minds weren't going to be right. They weren't going to be prepared to reintegrate and continue forward. And it ended up being one of the most wrong assumptions that was ever made about any group of people, because if you just think of what maybe people might call a classic definition of success, it ended up being one of the most overall successful groups of let's say under 500 people that you could find anywhere in the world. You're talking about people in all levels of government, from mayors and city commissioners to presidential candidates and representatives and senators, Fortune 500 CEOs, entrepreneurs that started their own business, people that went on to lead government agencies like FBI and CIA and other things like that. The group of people were a part of what's so much more of an important term known as post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress. And that has to be the example that we give for everybody as service members. Is this is what we bring to the table from the austere life that we lived, the training that we put into life every day, the things that separated. This is what we bring to the table, which can make us cold and callous and hard because of the things that we've seen, but it makes us valuable and realistic and the person that you want next to your side when the shit hits the fan.
Absolutely. You're remarkable. You are very inspiring. I want to read one more thing from you from that same article that you stated to wrap that up. The presidential race is about the direction of our country is taking. We need to make a clear choice in this election because there's no going back. It's a choice between those who believe Americans can and those who believe Americans can't. It's a choice between giving people, individuals, accountability and giving people excuses when they aren't successful. I think that leads us into the next remark that we would like to receive from you. Since we're doing this airing for honoring our NFRW veterans, women members for Veterans Day, and we're going to re-air this. I think that we would like to hear your words, which you've already given us. You're about to bring me to tears, just with your message. And I get it, because we do feed off of one another, fellow comrades. You helped me put aside some of this feelings that I was dealing with those who aren't appreciative of the veterans, or those who are actually trying to say that their service equates being a veteran. I used to say that maybe Americans should earn their freedom, and they would understand that, but that's not how we're trained. But I would like you to give a personal message to all of our NFR veterans, women members who have served. And they're from all over. Some of them date all the way back to Vietnam. And I can't begin to tell you, I'm a history buff. I can't begin to tell you how appreciative I am of the pictures that they're sending in, because even though I served in the Army, the National Guard, and the Air Force, the Navy women had 22 uniforms. The Army, we had the most ugliest uniforms. You're laughing, I know you are. And so, but it's an honor, because each and every last one of them led the way for us. They paved the way. Vietnam paved the way from sea rats all the way up to modern day eating in a restaurant. And so I would love for you to give a shout out to our National Federation of Veteran Women and their service for Veterans Day.
Yeah, I would say this to you all. First, jokingly, my wife loves a full closet. So for the Navy veterans, I mean, I can't give that much sympathy. No, and go Army, of course. But I want to say this in all seriousness. As veterans, and especially you female veterans, you have the most difficult job, I think, of anybody. All of us. I think we have the most difficult job in every day that we move forward outside of service. And here's why I think it's the most difficult job: because you had a career which had to be a passion, it had to be a way of life for you, where you held the lives of your friends and the lives of your enemies in your hand. You had to train for life or death things. You always had to be there to answer the call for your country in whatever way your country might call, or whatever place your country might call, no matter what was going on at home. It's damn near impossible, if not impossible, to replicate that. How does somebody replicate that level of value to their friends and to their country, the things that you've done for this place? And so it's in that I give you the utmost thanks for your service. You gave everything, and you move forward every day with, like I said, what I think is the most difficult task, trying to make things more than what they were in the past. But in doing that, I think you all do it in a way that you don't even know. When people see you as a veteran walking by because of the hat that you have on, or the way that you carry yourself, or something that's identifying about you, or because you're at a ceremony and they get the chance to speak to you and hear about your story, specifically, whatever it might be that tells people you are a veteran, they're now inspired by you. They're inspired by the things that you did that they didn't choose to do, or that you did and they didn't do because they couldn't do. The things that very few volunteer for, and even less are capable of. The things that you go out there and you do, not to get to a point of failure, but to do extremely difficult things to show yourself that you can overcome. And you inspire everybody around you. And inspiration is that thing that you can't buy it, you can't sell it, you can't bottle it. It's manifested in this almost magical way. But you as veterans manifest inspiration just by sharing something about yourself that to you was a simple moment of your life, but to everybody else was probably something they can barely comprehend. So I thank you all for being an inspiration to our country. I want everybody to see you and to know what you went through, and know that they owe this place as much as you've given.
Thank you for those inspiring words. You're about to make me cry. That's not fair. We're now going to open up a session for, I want to, because we want, first and foremost, I'm going to thank you again, because I know that the trail is tedious. I know you're in the middle of traveling, and so we want to be cognizant of your time, but maybe we could take a few questions and have you answer them. And so with that, we're going to give the members a
I will
chance
do my
to.
best.
Okay.
Or as it
Okay.
was said in speech, I will do my utmost.
Okay.
Okay, we have one good one on here that's kind of a dual question. And then I think that's all the time we have. You've given us quite a bit, and I know you're on your way out of the airport probably. So okay, so this is a dual question. I think this will be perfect to end it on. How did your service with the IDF come about? And then how will President Trump unwoke the US military and restore pride in service and drive up the numbers in serving?
Two great questions, right? So the story about being in the IDF, that's just a different story, right? So people see what's going on, I think, on the college campuses, Harvard and other places. And after I left the military, I was a student at Harvard, and you go back to 2014, I was on campus, and there was a war going on in Israel at that time, known as Operation Protective Edge. There was some Israeli service members that were abducted, and a war ensued. And at that same time, there was a lot of what was going on right now, not by any means to the same level as the craziness right now on these campuses, but there was a lot going on. And on that campus, there's people draping themselves in their Palestinian flags, and, having rallies and everything like that. And at one night, my wife and I, Brianna, we had our two oldest, Magnum and Maverick at the time, and she was pregnant with our third, Madeline. And we would take the kids out to this park in Boston called the Boston Commons on just a nightly basis, just to let them play, so they didn't have to play in the alley next to where we were staying. They could play in the park. And one of those nights, some of these protesters starting harassing me for being a U.S. service member. And it kind of goes to that connection about what people say about, them thinking like, oh, America's the big Satan and Israel's the little Satan. Sometimes people say that. And so these people started harassing me. And you might say, well, how did they know you were a U.S. service member? Well, I wear a hat that says Army Rangers, and I don't have any legs. So most people can figure it out pretty quickly. And that night became the catalyst. I got home and I told my wife, I said, Brianna, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to find a way. I'm going to go and show my support for Israel, the freedom that they represent, our common values that we share. I'm going to find a way and go and do that. And as service members, you know how we like to do things. We like to get our hands dirty, right? Yes, we're doing this meeting virtually right now, and we do things on social media sometimes, but we like to get our hands dirty. We like to do tangible things where we create real chapters, real stories in life. And so I ultimately, spoke to the consulates and the embassies and everything like that. And they found this way for me to go and serve with the IDF, which was a great adventure. And I have a very understanding wife who allowed me to go and do that. And so you take that. What was the second part of the question now? It was something about.
How do you think President Trump will unwoke the
Yes.
military so that we can recruit more and better?
Yeah. So I think it goes a little bit to that relationship with Israel and a whole lot of other things. We that have been in the military know that the military is a place that, as Mr. T said, he pities the fool. Like, it does not suffer fools. If you're a fool, you're acting a fool in the military. Not to say that we don't have fun times and we don't joke around from time to time, but it is, again, it's life and death work that is conducting operations at the highest possible levels, that bears the future of our nation in its hands. And when you look at our adversaries around the globe, whether it's China, whether it's North Korea, whether it's Iran, whether it's Russia, whether it's, take the adversaries that could pop up, it's incumbent that We have the best possible fighting force that is most concerned with the readiness of the force, the preparedness of the force, the capabilities of the force, what creates the force that does the absolute best job, and the policies that make it so that hopefully, as I said in the beginning, that force does not have to put people in harm's way where they may have to end up in Arlington National Cemetery like so many of our friends. People don't look at our military and say that that's the number one priority today. The biggest question that I get from all of the families that come out with their son or daughter that are interested in going to West Point or Naval Academy or Air Force or Merchant Marine Academy, the military academies, is their concern. And many of these legacy families, they have many generations that served in the military or went to these military academies. Their number one concern is wokeness in the military. What is the military is about? Is the military about the service and preparing those young people to be the best possible, most capable individuals? Or is it concerned about social experimentation? Is it concerned about how they can go out there and conduct things that are not good diplomacy, not good representation of the United States of America, doesn't make America the partner of choice? Or are we doing things that show America to be the best of who we are? And that's the biggest question coming from families, because everybody sees it. President Trump will turn the page. President Trump is determined to turn the page and make sure that the military is about those individual things, the readiness, the preparedness, the capability of the force, and then trying to make sure that we have policies on the diplomatic side that make it so that force does not have to be used. But if it has to be used, he knows there's no such thing as a fair fight. And when we fight to win.
Thank you. That's amazing. Once again, Congressman Brian J. Mast, we love you. I want you to know that you're very inspiring. Are you writing a book?
I have not written a book. I don't have any plans to currently. Still writing chapters, I guess, writing chapters of life. Don't have time for it, but I really do. I love y'all. My brothers and sisters, I really do. If there is ever anything ever in life, don't ever hesitate to reach out to me, because that's what we do as family. We take care of one another, and that does not end when we take on the uniform. It does not have an expiration. And I could talk a lot more about what President Trump wants to do for veterans, because there's a lot there, but maybe for another time. He's got some great plans for what he's going to do to help take care of the humans that served our country.
Well, we definitely would love to have you come back, and we'll schedule that. And I'd like to also thank everyone, our audience, and everyone, friends and members that are here, and look for this to re-air on the 11th and give us the support. Thank you again, Congressman Brian J. Mast. It's an honor.